There comes a moment in your life when God pulls back the curtain, not to show you what you lost, but to show you what he savvied you from. Somebody in this room has been crying over doors that closed, people who walked away, and connections that slipped through your fingers. But hear me when I say this by the Spirit of God, T-I-D-I-D-L-E-A-O-U, Geodramovid-T-M, and you're about to step into a season where he reveals do-H-Y. You're on the edge of a divine explanation. You're about to understand the protection, the prevention, and the promotion hidden behind every rejection. Get ready, because God is about to reveal why he didn't let certain people stay in your life. When God begins to remove people from your life, it rarely feels like deliverance in the moment. It feels like confusion, betrayal, disappointment, or even heartbreak. But what you don't see at first is that their departure is actually the closing of a chapter God never intended to take into your next season. There are people who were attached to a version of you that God is no longer endorsing. They were connected to the insecure you, the wounded you, the overly giving you, the easily manipulated you, the unhealed you, the you who tolerated things you should have confronted and embraced things you should have rejected. And the truth is, God cannot elevate you while you're still surrounded by people who only know how to function in your dysfunction. There are individuals who were comfortable when you were broken because your brokenness benefited them. They could control you, influence you, or depend on you in ways that weren't healthy for your spirit. They liked you small. They liked you silent. They liked you manageable. But the moment you began to outgrow the pain that bonded you, the friendships that fed off mutual struggle began to decay. The moment God started healing parts of you they counted on staying wounded, their access began to expire. Because not everybody who was with you during your valley is meant to stand with you on your mountain. Some people were never in love with you. They were in love with the version of you that served their convenience. God will often remove people quietly, suddenly, or even painfully when he knows that their influence is shaping an identity he never authored. There are relationships that reinforce the wrong version of you. They reminded you of who you used to be instead of who you're becoming. They kept you hostage to outdated behaviors, outdated thinking, outdated patterns, and outdated emotional cycles. God saw that if they stayed, you would keep living an expired identity. You cannot step into transformation while clinging to people who only recognize you by your trauma name. And God, in his mercy, will disrupt those connections so he can protect the identity he's forming inside you. Sometimes the separation doesn't happen through conflict. It happens through distance, misalignment, or a slow drifting. That's because God doesn't always remove people with thunder and lightning. Sometimes he removes them with silence. Sometimes he removes them by letting conversations dry up, interest fade, or paths diverge. And you start wondering what happened when in reality, nothing went wrong. Your growth simply outran their comfort zone. Your spirit elevated to a place their mindset can't follow. Your healing moved at a pace their brokenness can't match. The version of you God is raising up is simply incompatible with who they choose to remain. There are also people you prayed to keep in your life, not realizing that their presence was binding you to cycles you were trying to escape. You asked God to bless relationships that were built on old pain. You asked God to save friendships that were draining your spirit. You asked God to revive connections that were killing your self-worth. But God loves you too much to answer prayers that sabotage your future. So he removed them to rescue you. He closed doors you were trying to pry open. He allowed disappointment to become your deliverance, because if they stayed, you would have stayed the same. Some people were connected to an immature version of you, a you that didn't know your worth, didn't know your power, didn't know your voice, didn't know your anointing, didn't know your assignment. As you grow, your identity shifts. And when identity shifts, access restructures. People who once had front row seats to your life get moved to the balcony. People who once had daily conversations now get glimpses from a distance. And it's not about arrogance, it's about alignment. You can't carry old weight into a new destiny. You can't bring familiar comfort into a divine calling. Growth demands separation, and God orchestrates it to protect the work he's doing inside you. Think of how many times God spared you from being trapped in environments that would have clipped your wings. Think of how many times He removed people before they could plant seeds of doubt, fear, jealousy, or sabotage in your spirit. You thought it was rejection, but it was protection. You thought it was the enemy, but it was God shielding your becoming. The version of you they knew was not the version of you God is unveiling. Your evolution confuses people who only knew you by your struggles. Your strength intimidates those who benefited from your weakness. Your purpose disrupts relationships built on your past pain. So God had to remove them before they talked you out of the transformation He planned for you. Sometimes God removes people because their presence keeps you tied to emotional places He's trying to deliver you from. Every time you stayed connected, you kept reopening wounds He had already healed. You kept rehearsing your past instead of preparing for your future. You kept lowering your standards to maintain relationships that no longer fed your spirit. God saw that if they stayed, you would shrink to remain acceptable in rooms He never told you to enter. So He shut the door, not to punish you, but to preserve your becoming. And here is something deep. There are people who love the version of you that needed them, but they couldn't handle the version of you God was shaping. Stronger, wiser, clearer, confident, and purposeful. They were loyal to your weakness, but intimidated by your strength. So God removed them before their insecurities became your boundaries. God removed them before their jealousy became your ceiling. God removed them before their influence became a chain around your growth. You are evolving, and evolution requires shedding. Caterpillars don't stay in caterpillar company once the wings form. Your wings threatened the ones who preferred you crawling. So now, instead of asking why they left, start asking what God is making room for. Instead of mourning who walked away, start discerning who God is preparing to walk in. Instead of clinging to an old identity, start embracing the version of you that required their absence. Because the truth is simple. If they were meant to stay, growth wouldn't have pushed them out. God removed them because they were tied to a chapter He has already finished writing. And the moment you finally accept that their departure was divine, you'll realize it wasn't rejection at all. It was alignment. God is not punishing you, He's positioning you. He's protecting the version of you that carries destiny. And the people who could not handle who you're becoming were never meant to stay long enough to witness who you will be. There are seasons in your life when God begins to prepare you for something bigger, something heavier, something more demanding than anything you have ever carried before. And whenever God is getting ready to launch you into destiny, He starts by trimming your circle, not because you are unlovable, not because you are unworthy, not because you're difficult to be around, but because everyone connected to you is not equipped to walk with you into your next level. Some people's presence in your life would have sabotage where God intends to take you. Their influence, their mindset, their habits, or their spirit would have contaminated the environment God is cultivating around your purpose. So before God elevates you, He isolates you. Before He promotes you, He protects what He is building inside you by removing what could tear it down. You must understand this destiny is delicate. When God is preparing to elevate you, He is not just working on you. He is working around you. He is removing attitudes, conversations, and energies that cannot coexist with your next assignment. Some people in your life right now carry seeds of doubt, envy, fear, or mediocrity, and if they were allowed to stay close to you, they would talk you out of the boldness required for your future. They would water your fears instead of your faith. They would challenge your calling instead of celebrating it. They would pull you back into familiar cycles instead of pushing you into your divine future. There are individuals who would have sabotaged your destiny unintentionally simply because their perspective is too small for what God is doing with you. They cannot believe beyond what they see. They cannot imagine greater. They cannot dream bigger. And every time you try to rise, they would have reminded you of your limitations. Every time you tried to take a step forward, they would have spoken words that sent you 2 steps back. Their presence in your life would have become a weight on your wings. And God saw what you couldn't see, that you were trying to fly while surrounded by people who were more comfortable crawling. You were trying to stretch while surrounded by people who preferred shrinking. You were trying to evolve while surrounded by those who feared change. Some people sabotage not because they're wicked, but because they're wounded. Their pain becomes the lens through which they see your future. Their bitterness becomes the filter through which they speak into your life. Their insecurities become the ceiling they place over your possibilities. And if they stayed, they would have reshaped your mindset to match theirs. They would have made you feel guilty for wanting more. They would have convinced you that your calling was too much, that your dreams were too unrealistic, that your standards were too high. God removed them because the whisper of their insecurity would have suffocated the roar of your destiny. There are also people whose presence would have opened the door to spiritual sabotage. Their habits, their motives, their lifestyle, or their influences were misaligned with the purity of the assignment God is birthing in you. God knows the weight of the calling He placed on your life, and He also knows the spiritual warfare that comes with elevation. If He had allowed the wrong people to stay connected to you, they would have brought warfare you weren't meant to fight. They would have exposed you to battles you weren't equipped to handle. They would have attracted storms you weren't supposed to endure. God removed them to reduce your spiritual load, to safeguard your peace, and to ensure your destiny would not be contaminated by unnecessary warfare. And then there are people whose presence would have sabotaged your next level because their loyalty is inconsistent. They are supportive only when it benefits them. They celebrate you only when it doesn't outshine them. They stand with you only when it is convenient. God saw that if you brought them into your destiny moment, their wavering loyalty would have turned into betrayal. Their half-hearted support would have become resentment. Their inconsistent commitment would have created cracks in the foundation God is building for your future. So He removed them early, before their inconsistency could become your downfall. There are relationships that feel comfortable but are not covenant. They feel familiar but are not foundational. They feel close but are not aligned. And if they stayed, their comfort would have kept you complacent. Their familiarity would have kept you stuck. Their presence would have stabilized an old version of you that God is trying to break you out of. Some people help you survive, but they cannot help you evolve. Some people are perfect for your wilderness, but poisonous for your promised land. And God, in His wisdom, removed them because He knows you cannot walk into Canaan while still holding on to people who are content living in Egypt. God is not being cruel when He removes people. He's being strategic. He is protecting the anointing He placed on you. He is guarding the promise He made to you. He is preserving the destiny He designed for you. If those people stayed, their voice would have influenced your decisions. Their opinions would have shaped your choices, and their presence would have altered your path. They might have stopped you from taking the leap God was calling you to take. They might have talked you out of the risk God was requiring you to embrace. They might have delayed the moment God appointed you to rise. God removed them because they were tied to where you were, not where you're going. They were connected to your history, not your destiny. They could survive in your past, but they could not breathe in your future. And God is not willing to compromise your calling for the comfort of companionship. He will let you walk alone for a season if walking with the wrong people would sabotage His purpose in your life. Sometimes you don't realize how destructive someone's presence is until their absence brings peace. Sometimes you don't understand how heavy their influence was until you feel the lightness of being free from it. Sometimes you don't comprehend how far they would have held you back until you start moving forward without them. And once you see it, you'll thank God they didn't stay. You'll realize their departure was divine. You'll see that what you thought was loss was actually liberation. The truth is, your destiny is too great, your calling too powerful, your purpose too important to be compromised by the wrong company. God removed them not to hurt you, but to help you, not to diminish you, but to develop you, not to punish you, but to protect you. You are being positioned for something extraordinary, and their presence would have sabotaged it. So God stepped in. He separated what you wouldn't. He protected what you didn't realize needed protection. He preserved a future you haven't even seen yet. And one day, when you step fully into that destiny, when you look back and see where God brought you from, you will say with clarity and gratitude, Lord, thank you for who you removed. Thank you for every exit. Thank you for every closed door. Thank you for saving my future from the people who weren't built to steward it. There are people who come into your life not to stay forever, not to walk with you through every chapter, not to be permanent fixtures, but to serve a purpose for a specific season. One of the greatest sources of frustration in life is expecting lifelong commitment from people who were only assigned to temporary roles. We struggle because we try to anchor connections God designed to be transitions. We try to make permanent what God intended to be momentary. And when those people leave, drift away, change, or no longer fit the rhythm of our journey, we take it personally, never realizing that heaven had a timetable on that relationship from the very beginning. Some relationships are divine interventions for the moment you were in. They were assigned to help you through a storm, support you in a valley, hold you together when everything inside you was falling apart, or guide you when you couldn't see clearly. These people were bridges, not destinations. They were tools God used, not structures meant to remain. They had a purpose to teach, to shape, to strengthen, to awaken something in you that wouldn't have blossomed otherwise. But once the assignment is complete, God releases them not because something went wrong. Sometimes everything went exactly right. The season simply ended. We cling to people because of emotional attachment, history, comfort, or gratitude. But God deals in purpose, not preference. He deals in destiny, not familiarity. And He knows that if some people stayed beyond their season, they would begin to hinder the very purpose they once helped build. The relationship would shift from supportive to suffocating, from healthy to draining, from aligned to misaligned. Sometimes the expiration of a relationship is not a failure. It is divine timing. Think about the people who came into your life during moments of deep pain, heartbreak, confusion, or transition. They arrived precisely when they were needed. They offered insight, strength, love, or guidance that carried you through a difficult chapter. But once you healed, once you grew, once you gained clarity or strength, the dynamic changed. The connection no longer served the same purpose. And instead of letting the relationship naturally conclude, we fight to keep it alive. We try to revive what God is finished with. But resurrection is reserved for divine assignments, not expired ones. Some people are seasonal because they were never built for the weight of your long-term destiny. They were equipped for the chapter you met them in, not the book you are becoming. They had grace for your brokenness, but not for your breakthrough. They had patience for your wilderness, but not for your promised land. They could walk with you in the dark, but couldn't handle the brightness of your transformation. And God, in His wisdom, removes them so that your next level isn't hindered by someone who's only comfortable with your last level. There are also people who serve as mirrors, temporary reflections of what needs to be healed or confronted within you. They show you your patterns, expose your weaknesses, or highlight your strengths. They awaken the parts of you that were dormant. They force you to see truths you were avoiding. They push you toward growth, whether gently or through conflict. And once the lesson is learned, once the mirror has done its job, the relationship shifts, not because the person is bad or the bond was fake, but because the purpose was fulfilled. God never intended some relationships to follow you into the rest of your life. If He allowed them to stay, you would cling to familiar voices instead of learning to hear His. You would depend on support that was meant to be temporary training wheels instead of developing the strength to stand on your own. You would remain emotionally attached to a version of yourself God is trying to deliver you from. Because here is the truth. Some people make sense in one season but become distractions in another. They were essential in your past but incompatible with your future. Sometimes seasonal people try to stay longer than their assignment allows. You begin to feel frustration, conflict, or emotional distance. Conversations that once flowed become strained. Values that once aligned begin to diverge. The connection starts to feel forced. These are signs that God is gently separating what no longer fits. That discomfort is not the devil, it is divine disruption. God is closing a chapter you refuse to end. And sometimes you are the seasonal person in someone else's life. You might have been the help they needed, the answer to their prayer, the encouragement in their storm, but your purpose in their story may not include the next chapters. And that does not diminish your value. It affirms your assignment. God uses people like tools for construction. Some are used for laying foundations, others for framing walls, others for finishing touches. But no single tool builds an entire house. You were part of a process, not the entire blueprint. When you understand that relationships have spiritual seasons, you stop living disappointed. You stop blaming yourself when people leave. You stop forcing connections that no longer carry God's breath. You stop grieving the endings that heaven orchestrated. You begin to see people as gifts, not guarantees. You begin to appreciate their presence without idolizing their permanence. You begin to release without bitterness, saying, "Thank you, God, for the part they played. Thank you for the season they carried. And thank you for the grace to let go." Letting go does not mean forgetting the value someone added to your life. It means honoring the season they were assigned to. It means blessing them without craving their return. It means remembering them without reviving what is dead. It means understanding that God's orchestration is wiser than your emotional impulses. And when He removes someone, He is never subtracting from your destiny. He is clearing the stage for the next act. The beauty of God's design is that He never removes without replacing. He never ends a season without beginning another. He never closes a chapter without writing a new one. When seasonal people leave, it is a sign that new people, new opportunities, new wisdom, and new levels are on the way. Your life does not shrink when people exit. It expands. Your purpose does not weaken, it strengthens. Your clarity does not fade, it sharpens. So embrace the truth. Some people were never meant to stay. Their presence was purposeful, but their departure is also purposeful. They were a blessing on the journey, but not companions for the destination. And the moment you accept that, you free yourself from the pain of trying to hold on to what God has already released. You step into peace. You step into maturity. You step into alignment. And most importantly, you step into destiny, unburdened by relationships that were only meant to last as long as the season that required them. Sometimes the greatest blessings in your life come dressed like heartbreak. The most transformative moments arrive looking like rejection, abandonment, or disappointment. But what you must understand, deep in your spirit, not just in your mind, is that rejection is not always the enemy. Rejection is often God's redirection. He closes doors you would have walked through blindly. He removes people you would have held on to desperately. He blocks paths you thought were meant for you because He sees danger where you see desire. He sees collapse where you see comfort. He sees limitation where you see longing. And because His love is protective, not permissive, He will shut down what you wouldn't have the courage to walk away from. There are times when God lets someone reject you because you wouldn't have left on your own. You would have kept giving to them. You would have kept compromising for them. You would have kept shrinking yourself to fit their world. You would have kept adjusting your standards to maintain the connection. And God saw that if He didn't allow them to walk out, you would never step into the healing required for your destiny. So He let the relationship break. He let the disappointment sting. He let the door slam, not to embarrass you, but to save you, not to punish you, but to propel you. Rejection often feels like destruction, but it's actually construction. God is tearing down what was never strong enough to support the weight of your calling. He is removing foundations that would have cracked under pressure. He is stripping away attachments that were draining your strength. And although it hurts, the pain is purposeful. The disappointment is divine. The discomfort is necessary for the version of you God is building. Consider how many times you begged God to make something work that was slowly breaking you. You prayed for reconciliation when God was trying to bring separation. You prayed for restoration when God was trying to bring redirection. You prayed for longevity when God was trying to bring liberation. You asked Him to breathe life into something He Himself was pulling the plug on. And when He didn't answer the way you expected, you thought He was silent. But He wasn't silent. He was saving you. There are people who look like blessings, but are actually burdens wrapped in charisma. There are opportunities that look like open doors, but lead to spiritual dead ends. There are relationships that feel comfortable, but are catastrophes waiting to happen. And because God sees what you cannot see, He removes them before they pull you off course. He will not allow you to enter a future that decreases you. He will not let you marry into misery. He will not let you befriend betrayal. He will not let you invest your heart into someone who would mishandle it. Rejection is his way of rerouting your destiny before you attach to the wrong thing. The reason the rejection hurts so deeply is because your heart was invested in an outcome God never planned for you. You pictured a life with those people. You imagined a future that included them. You built expectations around them. But God is not obligated to fulfill the dreams you created outside his will. He is committed to his purpose for you, not your preferences. So when he closes a door, it is because that room was never designed to contain your promise. When he removes someone, it is because that soul was never compatible with your calling. Rejection also exposes what is fragile in you. It reveals where your identity is tied too tightly to someone else's approval. It shows you where you depend on validation instead of God's affirmation. It uncovers the emotional places where you placed your worth in human hands instead of divine ones. And through the pain, God begins to rebuild you. You learn to stand without the support you thought you needed. You learn to thrive without the people you thought you couldn't live without. You learn to depend on God in ways you never would have if rejection had not forced you into his arms. Rejection corrects your direction. It shifts you onto paths that align with your purpose. Many of the greatest breakthroughs in your life begin with a no. The job that turned you down pushed you toward the business God wanted you to start. The relationship that ended prepared you for the covenant he was saving you for. The friends who walked away created space for people who would love, support, and uplift you. What you thought was loss was actually preparation for something greater than you could imagine. Sometimes God closes the door violently because you were too emotionally attached to walk away gently. He lets the hurt be sharp so the healing can be swift. He lets the separation be sudden so the growth can be accelerated. He lets the rejection be painful so that you won't return to what wounded you. He does not want you tied to something that competes with his plan for your life. You must recognize that some doors close because the season has ended. Other doors close because the season was dangerous. And some doors close because God is preparing a better one to open, but he won't open it while you're still standing in front of something he shut. When rejection comes, you often ask, God, why? But the real question is, God, what are you making room for? Because rejection always creates space for growth, space for restoration, space for healthier connections, space for divine upgrades, space for the next level of your identity. God will never subtract without adding. He will never remove without replacing. He will never close without planning an opening. But he will not allow you to carry dead weight into your destiny. He will not allow you to drag expired relationships into elevated seasons. He will not let you surrender your calling to satisfy your loneliness. So he steps in, he interrupts, he disrupts, he redirects, and in time, what once felt like the worst moment of your life will become the clearest example of God's goodness. You will look back and say, God, thank you for not giving me what I wanted. Thank you for not letting that door stay open. Thank you for loving me enough to protect me from what I thought I needed, because someday you will see the fullness of what he was doing. And when you do, you will no longer call it rejection. You will call it deliverance. You will no longer call it pain. You will call it preparation. You will no longer call it loss. You will call it alignment. You will no longer cry over the door that closed. You will shout over the one that opened. Rejection was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to redirect you. And everything God redirected you from was never meant to be part of your destiny to begin with. There comes a moment in every believer's life when clarity begins to rise out of chaos, when the fog starts lifting, and suddenly you begin to understand that what you thought was random, what you thought was painful, what you thought was unfair was actually God arranging your steps with precision. You start to see that every separation had strategy in it. Every goodbye had grace in it. Every closed door had direction in it. And everything you lost was preparing you for everything God is about to reveal. You begin realizing that God is not cruel. He is calculated. He is not reactive. He is intentional. And now, right now, you are stepping into the season where he begins unveiling the purpose behind the separation, the revelation behind the rejection, and the meaning behind the exit of certain people who once occupied space in your life. God is a master architect. He never removes without rebuilding. He never subtracts without intending to multiply. He never prunes without preparing for fruitfulness. But when you were in the middle of the pruning season, it felt like loss. You felt empty, confused, and abandoned. You questioned yourself. You questioned your worth. You questioned your discernment. You wondered how people who once promised loyalty could suddenly disappear. You wondered how those you invested in could simply walk away. You wondered how God could allow so much separation. But what you didn't know then is what God is revealing now. Their departure was part of your destiny. This unveiling season is powerful because it removes the bitterness that tried to grow in your heart. When you don't understand why people left, the enemy whispers lies. He tells you that you weren't enough, that you weren't lovable, that you were the problem. He convinces you that something is wrong with you. But when God begins to reveal the purpose behind the separation, you realize that nothing was wrong with you. Everything was right with your future. God wasn't rejecting you. He was protecting you. He was protecting your peace, your purpose, your progress, and your potential. He was protecting the version of you that you have not fully grown into yet. And now that He's lifting the veil, you're beginning to understand that if those people stayed, they would have limited your growth, diminished your confidence, or poisoned your purpose. Part of this revelation is seeing how their exit created space in you. Space for healing, space for evolving, space for discovering who you are without their influence. Some people kept you tied to identities that no longer fit you. They reminded you of the old you, the insecure you, the fearful you, the unsure you. Their presence made it harder for you to embrace the new version God was cultivating. And now God is showing you that their absence was the soil in which your transformation took root. You wouldn't have grown like this if they stayed. You wouldn't have prayed like this. You wouldn't have matured like this. You wouldn't have become this version of yourself. God is also revealing that some people had secret intentions you didn't see. While you were genuine, they were opportunistic. While you were loyal, they were double-minded. While you were pouring in, they were draining you. While you were covering them, they were exposing you. God saw conversations you didn't hear. He saw motives you couldn't discern. He saw jealousy you brushed off. He saw manipulation you excused. And because He loves you too much to let your destiny be tampered with, He removed them before their hidden agendas could contaminate the assignment on your life. Now you can see it clearly, not with anger, but with understanding. God wasn't taking something from you, He was taking something off you. In this season of revelation, God begins showing you how their presence was delaying what He wanted to release. Some people had access to you that diluted your anointing. They distracted your focus. They consumed your energy. They drained your creativity. And as long as they remained close, you couldn't hear God clearly. Their influence created noise in your spirit, but now that they're gone, you can sense God's voice again. Ideas are returning. Vision is returning. Peace is returning. Confidence is returning. And you begin to realize that separation was necessary for restoration. Then there's another layer of revelation, not about them, but about you. God begins showing you that their removal forced you into deeper dependency on Him. You prayed more, you listened more, you surrendered more, you learned to walk alone, you learned to trust God in the dark. You learned how to find peace without validation. You learned how to build without applause. And those lessons are preparing you for the next season because what God is bringing you into requires a stronger version of you. The separation didn't weaken you, it built you. Now comes the most beautiful part. God is getting ready to reveal the replacements, the people who will love you genuinely, the people who will walk with you faithfully, the people who will speak into your life with purity, the people who will celebrate you without competition, the people who will protect you, honor you, and uplift you. God is bringing connections that align with your purpose, not your past. These relationships will not drain you. They will develop you. They will not break you. They will build you. They will not distract you. They will accelerate you. These are destiny connections, not emotional attachments. And God needed to clear the room before they entered. As God unveils the purpose behind the separation, you will also see that some doors closed so bigger ones could open. You were attached to opportunities that were beneath your calling. You were committed to environments that limited your potential. You were investing in places that could never give back what you were sowing. And God had to break your attachment to make room for elevation. Some people leaving was the only way your gifts could rise. Some doors closing was the only way your creativity could expand. Some relationships ending was the only way your anointing could flourish. What felt like loss was actually the architecture of your next level. And finally, God is revealing the truth that brings everything together. If those people were meant to stay, nothing could have removed them. But because God had a higher plan, nothing could keep them. Their departure was not a sign of your inadequacy, it was a sign of your destiny. You are stepping into a season where God is not only healing your heart, but also enlightening your understanding. He is turning confusion into clarity. He is turning hurt into wisdom. He is turning loss into direction. And He is turning separation into elevation. You are about to look back with gratitude. You are about to say, Lord, now I see it. Now I understand it. Now I know why you didn't let certain people stay. This is your season of revelation, and everything that once broke you is about to make sense in a way that blesses you beyond measure. There comes a moment in your life when you stop mourning what walked away and start celebrating what God protected. There comes a moment when the tears you cried over who left suddenly start to make sense. There comes a moment when the darkness you wrestled with in the midnight hour becomes the revelation that fuels your destiny. And I came to declare over your life today, that moment is now. God is revealing why He didn't let certain people stay. God is exposing the hidden places, the unseen motives, the undercover traps, and the quiet dangers that He shielded you from. You weren't rejected, you were rescued. You weren't abandoned, you were elevated. You weren't forgotten, you were preserved. You've spent years thinking you weren't good enough, wondering what you did wrong, questioning the value of your heart, your loyalty, your love, your intentions. But today God is clearing the fog from your spirit. He is breaking the lies off your mind. He is breathing truth into your soul. You didn't lose them. God lost them for you. Because your heart was too pure, your calling too great, your future too weighty for Him to let the wrong people contaminate it. They were connected to the version of you that was surviving, not the version of you that is about to thrive. They were attached to the chapter that was ending, not the one God is writing next. And hear me, God never allows subtractions without preparing multiplication. God never removes without intending to replace with better. God never prunes without preparing new fruit. Every now was a divine setup for a bigger way. Yes, every closed door was rerouting you to the right one. Every departure created space for what was ordained. Every ending unlocked a beginning. The people who walked away could not carry the weight of who you are becoming. They were too small for the level you are rising to. They were too limited for the future God is releasing. They were too fragile for the warfare you are anointed to win. God knew their presence would pollute your purpose. God knew their mindset would cripple your momentum. God knew their loyalty had conditions, and your calling requires covenant. So He stepped in. He intervened. He interrupted what you wouldn't have had the strength to end. And now God is revealing the purpose behind the pain, the clarity behind the confusion, the healing behind the heartbreak. He's lifting the veil and showing you that everything that happened had to happen. Every separation served a purpose. Every disappointment built a strength. Every heartbreak sharpened your discernment. Every betrayal positioned you for breakthrough. What the enemy meant to destroy you actually developed you. What tried to crush you is now crowning you. What came to break you is now birthing you. You are stepping into a season where God is about to restore what was stolen, replace what was lost, and reward what was endured. You are stepping into a season where your spirit is lighter because your circle is smaller. You are stepping into a season where you will thank God for the goodbyes you once grieved. You are stepping into a season where the right people, God's people, divinely aligned, purpose-driven, destiny-connected, will enter your life and accelerate everything God placed in you. Because hear this, God never subtracts without intention. When He removes, it's because He's about to reveal. When He separates, it's because He's preparing to elevate. When He closes the chapter, it's because the next one is already written, and He is about to reveal why He didn't let certain people stay in your life, not to embarrass them, but to enlighten you, not to shame them, but to strengthen you. not to show you what you lost, but to show you what you are now free to gain. So lift your head, square your shoulders, wipe your tears. There is nothing behind you that compares to what is in front of you. God is still writing. God is still moving. God is still protecting. God is still directing. And the same God who removed the wrong people is about to release the right opportunities. The same God who closed the door is about to open a greater one. The same God who separated you is about to elevate you in plain sight. And when God finishes revealing, you will stand on the other side of this season and say, Lord, thank you. Thank you for every no. Thank you for every exit. Thank you for every closed door. Thank you for every person who didn't stay. Because now I see you were never taking from me. You were preparing me. Get ready. Because you are about to walk into the greatest clarity, the greatest confidence, the greatest connections, and the greatest calling you have ever known. God is about to reveal why he didn't let certain people stay, so you can step boldly, joyfully, fearlessly into everything he has waiting for you. And when he reveals it, you won't question him ever again.